What is up, Festival Tales fam? Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast. Ade is not going to be with us on this week of the podcast. She is taking a little bit of a break. Her voice was hurting, and we want her back next week for more episodes. Before we do get started, a few things from me. If you please can subscribe to the podcast, we greatly appreciate that. In other news, we have Reels and TikToks going on our Instagram and TikTok for you guys to watch if you want short clips, as well as we have videos on YouTube. So go check them all out there. And if you really want to watch the podcast, you can also watch it on Spotify if you have the app. That would be awesome. And that's all I got for us. So we do have a special guest today. Instead of Ade, Jess is dropping in for us for this episode. Jess, what's up? What's up?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. Let's dive into it. So let's start with your journey. Let's give your background information a little bit here. So let's go with that. What is your background? There's a reason we're having you on, of course, but go ahead.
So I've been a raver for like 10 years. Actually, I hit a decade in October, which is insane. Mm-hmm. And I used to work with people who use drugs. I used to do addiction research. So I'm really passionate about both things, and I saw this need in the community when around the time when I first started getting started at raves. It seemed like someone was dying from a drug related issue at every single festival that I was going to, and I was like, this is a huge problem. And then I found out about the organization Dance Safe, and they're a 501c3 nonprofit who provides harm reduction services and peer-to-peer drug education at music festivals. So I got involved with them. I've been with them for 7 years, and then I've been a chapter officer for 6 years. I think I've got those numbers right. I'm not sure, but it's been a while. So that's where a lot of my experience comes from. I love volunteering at festivals. I've done, besides the work that I do with Dance Safe, with drug education and drug checking, I have also worked at a few different festivals doing health and safety related things. Nice. I just got it was in 2020, but I got my master's in public health, and because I wanted to continue doing this, and
that's awesome.
Yeah. And awesome. I want this to be my career. I'm so passionate about it. And also in 2020, I started my TikTok kind of accidentally. I saw what an amazing platform it was for educating people. And I wasn't providing services anymore at music events because the world had shut down. So music events weren't happening, right. But I wanted to keep giving back to the community. And I saw this opportunity on TikTok, and I posted a few TikToks, and one of them ended up blowing up. And I guess 2 years later, here I am. I'm about to hit 100,000 followers.
That's awesome. No, that's a big goal. So what was it? What was the deciding factor that got you into where you were like, okay, now I want, obviously you said you have your background and whatnot, but what was it that you were like, I want to start doing this? Was there an event? Was there something that occurred where you were on that day, you were the next day I'm starting this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was the next day, but I think the biggest catalyst, or the event that saying out the most in my mind. So at Electric Zoo in, I want to say it was 2012. No, maybe 2013. I went on that Friday. I've never been to all 3 days of Electric Zoo. I always would do just one day, but I went that Friday. And then on the Sunday ended up getting canceled because two people had died on Saturday. Oh, and I just remember waking up and hearing that news, and I knew people who were still going to that event. And that was very newsworthy. There were a lot of news outlets reporting on it. Because, two people dying at an event and then having it get canceled because of that is a huge deal. So that was the event that really stuck out in my mind. And yeah, I guess that sort of led me on a journey to wanting to combine my skills as a person who works with people who uses drugs, and someone who's very passionate about the rave community. And yeah, it all went from there.
Yeah, and it's obvious that it is a part of the rave community. It's there's, I mean, I think we all know people that go and they do their party favors or party enhancements, as some call them. But so what would as a festival standpoint, what in your opinion can they do to prevent that situation from occurring? What are things that they can do, right before the festival that would be better than what they are doing now? How would you fix that situation, if you were given a magic wand type of
that is a loaded question. There are so many things that I would fix. Unfortunately, I think there's laws and there's regulations that prevent harm reduction services from fully being able to be there. So a lot of festivals do not permit drug checking booths at the festival. And that's because of the Rave Act. I'm not going to get into it, but basically it says that promoters can be held responsible for knowing that drug use was happening at their event. And the law is so vague that a lot of event producers think that drug checking and even like drug education and free water fall under that law, and they can be held liable for like anything that happens. So I guess if I had a magic wand, I would get rid of the Rave Act.
Right.
That would hopefully get rid of a lot of the problems that we have with like not allowing harm reduction to be at events. Another huge thing that I would do, plentiful free water. One of the biggest like issues that were emergencies that people have at festivals is like heat stroke.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways to prevent that is having accessible water. Like I can't tell you how many festivals I've been to where there might be a few water stations, but the line to get water is an hour long, and everyone's like clumped together, which if people are dehydrated and then they're clumped together, they're getting even more hot. Like that's just a recipe for disaster. So I would make sure that there is plenty of free running water, charging no more than like $2 for a water bottle. I think it's ridiculous that some festivals are charging like $5-6 for a water bottle. There obviously is some cost. They have to buy the water, they have to transport it, all of that stuff. But I have never seen a festival budget. I just can't imagine that it would be more than $2 per bottle, maybe even less than that. So I think those are like the main things that I would change if I had a magic wand.
Yeah, no, that great things to change. You brought up the fact of heat stroke, and I'm just kind of curious, what is kind of like the number one cause that people would need to seek the medical tent and stuff like that? Is it from heat stroke from taking, like MDMA or something, or is it just in general the fact that it's out there and it's hot and you're dancing with a bunch of other people right around you?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a combination of all of those factors. You can be totally sober and get heat stroke. If you're people at festivals, they're dancing, that's exercise. A lot of festivals are in the summer. It gets really hot. Like I said, sometimes water isn't as accessible. So yeah, you could be totally sober and still have heat stroke. However, taking drugs in general, I think, can exacerbate the effects of heat stroke, particularly MDMA. I am not a neuroscientist and I always struggle to explain how exactly it works, but basically MDMA can exacerbate the risk of heat stroke. Has something to do with like hydration and water retention. And then also just in general with taking drugs, you are more likely to forget to hydrate.
Yeah.
And you might also be more likely to be like dancing harder. So in general, taking drugs can exacerbate that risk.
Yeah, MDMA is an interesting one because I was always told that it messes with like your body's way of like its own temperature in a sense. And
yeah, like thermoregulation.
Something, right.
Yeah.
So it does, sometimes you get super hot. That's why sometimes you don't really get cold, but you kind of are, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were mentioning, yeah, and then with drinking water, like because your body's thrown off, like what was it again? You said
Thermoregulation.
Because of the thermoregulation, you also don't know when, like, this is what I was told. And again, I don't actually know.
No, you sound like spot on so far. So
okay. Whew. And then I was also told, like, because of that, you don't know when you like have to go to the bathroom, when you should drink water and all that. So like some people, now I've heard this too, like you could drink too much water from and then not know. And then that could also be a bad thing. So it's like, that's why it's important as like the rave dad or the rave mom of the group, which I usually am the rave dad. I'm like, all right, did everybody like, it's such a weird thing to do, but like, did you all go to the bathroom? Like, because if you haven't in like 3 or 4 hours, you really need to, and they need to not drink more water at that point. And then if obviously after that, drink more water. But yeah, interesting. That's what I've always been told, that it messes with that oh my gosh, one more time. Thermoregulation to where you don't, that's why like you could drink too much water, you could drink too little, you could have issues when you don't go to the bathroom for 5, 6, 7 hours. Yeah, MDMA is a weird one, but I would say, I mean, is it the most popular party favor in that sense? I feel like that was one that should be a lot of knowledge about, like, because I feel like most people, that's the one they think of when raves.
Yeah, I don't have any, I'm not sure, but I would say it's definitely up there. Another one I would probably say that's up there is like Coke. And the only reason I think that might be more popular is I think people, think that they can take it more often, and not have, there's the 3-month rule with MDMA where like you shouldn't take it more than every 3 months because there can be neurotoxicity, and you can also like lose the magic. So if you keep taking it, you might not feel the effects of it after prolonged use. With Coke, I'm not encouraging you to do it every night, but like you're not going to have that same effect with like repeated use. And there definitely is like a
come down
return, lesser return if you're taking it that long, but it's not the same as with MDMA, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah, there's people that probably do it every weekend and then but eventually the diminishing returns, it always catches up to
diminishing returns. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
That's okay. I still can't say that. So we're helping each other out there. But it's either way, I feel like those diminishing returns eventually with any substance, and this is my opinion, it eventually catches up to you. It's just, it's a matter of time. If you're doing it so often that there's going to be a point where it is no longer a good time, however good it can be. Because I know for me personally, I've had friends go really off the rails with MDMA and stuff, and it's something that for me, it's a very big subject where I want people to have your fun, but it's very important that they know the consequences of doing it too much and don't do it too much, because I have had friends that spiraled out of control, and it is not a pretty sight to see. I mean, I don't know if you've witnessed that or have had people in your life, but I mean, I had a buddy that and he is better now, I will say that, and thank goodness. We actually all sat down with him. We're like, you gotta cut this out, because this is just not doing you justice. Like you're all over the place. You can't finish sentences. You can't keep a conversation. He was like, we would be talking about something, he would just blurt something out thinking he was part of it, then not, like just all sorts of things that mess with his brain. It took him a while to wane off of it and be done. And I will say he's better, but it is scary if it gets to that level, I will be honest. So
yeah, and people say that you can't get addicted to MDMA. In reality, you can get addicted to anything. It might not be a physiological addiction or dependence, but you can be psychologically dependent. But I'm glad that your friend is better now.
Yeah, it's it's definitely was a little like, oh goodness, like it was just a very eye-opening in a way. Not that I'd want anyone to go through that, but it, like in a in a sense of when you don't know that that's possible, and then you see that happen to somebody, you're like, oh, this is a little more than like I anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
MDMA is also interesting to me because there's been a lot of stuff coming out with like therapeutics and whatnot. Do you have any information on that? Any light of that? Just out of curiosity. Not really what
Yes,
we're
I
pertaining
do.
to, but
I probably can't tell you like the full picture, but I can definitely like give you the gist of what's happening. I think it's so interesting. So basically an organization called the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They started studying the use of MDMA for treatment resistant PTSD. And they're now on like the phase 3 trial, which is like, they're getting close to the end now. And they're finding that it's extremely effective in combination with psychotherapy. So it's it's called MDMA assisted psychotherapy. So this, don't just, if you have PTSD, don't just go taking like street MDMA and like think that it's gonna
right. Yeah. It's like
help.
ghost out. You're in a room with someone, I'm assuming, talking and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're getting, it's 100%, or I think it's like 99.98% pure MDMA. You really can't guarantee that you're getting that
Anywhere
on
on
the
the
street.
streets.
Yeah. You're with a trained therapist, and then you're doing multiple sessions, I think over the course of like, I want to say like 5 weeks. That might be not be right. It might be that they do one session and then they wait 5 weeks and then they do another one. So don't quote me on that. But yeah, so they're finding that it's extremely effective. People who have had treatment resistant PTSD are like, not needing any sort of like other medication after this. And the FDA designated this MDMA assisted psychotherapy as like a breakthrough designation, which means that it's like insanely effective, basically. So I'm really excited to see what comes of all of this. There's other trials happening with different kinds of psychedelics, so it's all very exciting. I am very curious to see what's going to come of it, because I'm just very pessimistic that like the pharmaceutical companies are going to want to invest in something that is that effective, and you only need to take a few times in order for like your treatment to basically be over with. Right. I think a lot, the pharmaceutical companies tend to want to invest in drugs that you have to take every single day because that's what's most profitable. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that after, the FDA, after they're done with like their research studies, basically.
Yeah, that would be, I hope you'd hope the pharmaceutical companies don't get too involved. It's almost better to have them not involved, because it seems as though like people that are more passionate about those specific drugs, that for the beneficial uses, of course, that you'd rather have them in those positions, because they're actually like wanting to do really good with it. They're wanting to promote safe use, and it's for helping people. So yeah, I wouldn't want that either. I'm curious on the what let's start with this. Like, what tips and tricks do you have for the listeners and festival goers, like with 2022 festival season coming up? What would be some of the top things you suggest?
Well, anybody that knows me knows what I'm about to say next, which is test your drugs.
Yes, that is a yes.
Yeah.
A big given. Sorry.
If you need a test kit, you can get one from DanceSafe. They've got really detailed instructions. I also have instructions on my TikTok page. And something that a bunch of people asked me about actually was like traveling with a test kit, because obviously a lot of people fly to different festivals and they want to be safe when they get there. So people have been asking me like, can you bring a test kit on an airplane? And the technical answer to that is no, because they are technically still considered drug paraphernalia in the majority of states. They're also made of like corrosive material, so you can't bring that on an airplane, unfortunately. But what I always tell people to do, there's a few different things that you can do if you like need to get a test kit once you get there. Look up if the state is, if test kits are legal in that state, and then you can find out like if there's any like retail stores that carry them. Check if DanceSafe is going to be at the event, or if they have a local chapter, and then you could buy one there. And it might seem like kind of like a huge cost to just like buy a test kit that you're only going to use once because you can't fly back with it. But I always tell people to like split it with your friends, because if you're doing substances, you probably are doing them with your friends. So, you can split it with everyone, and then, that brings down the cost substantially. And then the other thing that I tell people, now I forget, like I had like a fourth point about what people can do with the test kit or how to get a test kit, and it's gone. That's okay. Use the 3 points that I gave. Yeah, so that's been like a big topic that a lot of people message me about.
Do you recommend, I saw you've got a variety of test kits linked in your bio and stuff. Do you recommend a specific one? Obviously, I saw there's some for specific. I see. Here's a great question, because I had this question. So there was a couple that were like for specific drugs: MDMA, a coke, acid. They all were specifically for those drugs. If you bought the MDMA one, it was specifically only for MDMA. You couldn't test for other things, but it tests for stuff like bath salts, I think it was, or something like that.
Yeah,
getting that right?
Yeah. So with the MDMA test kit, any reagent will react to like pretty much any drug. You're going to get either a reaction, which is a color change, or a no reaction. So either one you get, that's still a reaction, that's still like a way to potentially like narrow down the list of substances that you have. So even if you're getting the MDMA test kit, you can still technically test like coke. It's just not going to be, you're not going to have like enough information from those tests to be able to be like, okay, this might be coke, there might be some adulterants in my coke. So that's why there's like different test kits. And if you look at the test kits that you can buy, there is like overlap in the kits that come in each bottle that comes in each kit. So basically when you order like a substance specific kit, you're ordering the reagents that are going to be able to best identify the substance that it's for. So with an MDMA test kit, you're going to first use Marquise, which is going to turn like black if it's MDMA. But then you need to know, Marquise also turns black for like MDA and 5-APB. So if you want to know that it's MDMA and not MDA or 5-APB, you're going to next use Simon. And Simon is able to distinguish between MDA and MDMA. So then if you're like, if there's like no reaction with Simon, then it could be MDA. It's not going to be MDMA, because MDMA would have turned blue. So then to narrow down even further, you're going to use Freud, which can distinguish between MDA and 5-APB. And I've actually had a test come back before. I had like no idea what 5-APB was. And this was before Freud was like in the standard kit. Or in like we used to sell, DanceSafe used to sell like a 4-panel kit, and it was basically for testing MDMA, but like a few of the reagents were kind of redundant. So now there's a new 5-panel kit. So this was pre 5-panel. And I happened to have Frode, and I tested it, and it ended up being 5-APB. And like, we never would have known that if I hadn't had Frode with me at that time.
Interesting. I'm not even familiar with what 5-ATB is.
It's either 5-APB or it could be 6-APB. And it's still a role. It's more of a psychedelic role.
Interesting. So it's not going to have will it have any different side effects than MDMA? Or is it similar? Just
that I don't know. I mean, that really, I guess it depends on, I guess, if it's a serotonin releaser. I'm not exactly sure of like the neurochemistry behind it, but I will say that it's important to use Frode, and Frode is in the MDMA test kit, because if you take an MDMA size dose of 5-APB, you're probably gonna it's probably gonna be a bit too much. You might be kind of floored. So you need to dose it lower than MDMA. So that's why it's important to know, because then this person whose substances I was who's like 5-APB I ended up testing, I had to look it up, and I was like, you might want to actually kind of, get some of the substance out of this because they had it in like a capsule. So I was like, you should probably you might want to empty some of that out, because with this much, that's a pretty high dose.
Right. I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to touch on it too, MDA, I'm familiar with it. I always forget though what the difference is between the two. Obviously, chemically they are very different, but I always forget the side effects of what happens, because there's also MDE, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Just something else in its own nature too.
I think so. I don't know anything about MDE, but I will say that MDA is pretty similar to MDMA. And if you're not if you're not a user, you might not even be able to tell the difference between MDMA and MDA if you didn't test it. MDA is a little bit more psychedelic because it binds with the I'm going to butcher this, 5-HT receptors in your brain. I don't know if that's right, but basically it binds with the same receptors that psilocybin would bind with. So that's why it's a little bit more psychedelic. And then MDMA is a little bit more lovey, euphoric, but they're still very similar. They've got a very similar duration, similar side effects. You would want to apply the same harm reduction practices if you're using either of them. So very similar, but there are some small differences.
Gotcha. So tip number 1, test your stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Tip number, is there any other tips that you could give? For instance, you mentioned I'll let you answer. I'm sorry, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. So
no, it's okay.
Any other tips that you would have that you could give to festival goers coming up this season?
Hydration, super important. I already talked about it a little bit, but something I didn't mention was, and that you had sort of started touching on, was that you can overhydrate. So you want to sort of keep track of how much water you're intaking, sip, don't chug. Mm-hmm. That's a good rule of thumb. And I think it's 2 to 3-ish water bottles per hour is good if you're in a hot environment and you're sweating and dancing a lot. And also, so to prevent overhydration, you can also use electrolytes, because basically what happens with overhydration, which is also called hyponatremia, is that you drink so much water and there's a certain level of salt that you need in your body, and you're basically like oversaturating your body with water and you're depleting your sodium levels. So to balance out the sodium water levels, that's what electrolytes are. So if you ever see like
Gatorade and
exactly.
Liquid IV, all those.
Liquid IV, yep, all of those things are really good.
Very interesting. Sorry, I did not mean to cut you off, but that's so interesting because I remember somebody, this was like when I first started, and it was like the third rave or something, and someone was like, oh, you need to eat a snack and eat something beforehand. And I was like, oh, we're at a gas station already. And I was like, oh, they're like, we'll get pretzels. Sodium's good for you. They kind of went into that, but you just like unlock that core memory of them being like, yeah, eat pretzels before because you'll get sodium.
Yep.
For the rave. So I don't know. It just made me laugh when you said that. I was like, oh my God, it makes sense why they told me to get pretzels with salt and everything. But interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I think it might have been on like a Liquid IV TikTok or something, but someone commented on it and was like, I would never use this. Look at the sodium. It's so high. You really need to like be careful about sodium. And it's like that you clearly like, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to judge because, education is key, but you don't know what you're talking about. Like that's the whole point of the product is for there to be a lot of sodium.
That is funny because people associate, isn't sodium and salt they're a little different, but sodium's in salt. And is there, because I've thought that too. I remember thinking that because like one of the places I love to go to eat, I love Chick-fil-A, I'll be honest. They got good. All right, I like the food.
The fries
are good. Okay. But they
nothing
have
like them.
Their chicken is super high in sodium. And there was like a brief period where I was like, this is not good, but blah, blah, blah. So why do we think, like, what is it that we think sodium is bad for us when it's probably the actual just salt? Like you shouldn't be having mountains of table salt and everything.
Yeah, I mean, and it depends on the context. So like if you are drinking a lot of water, you need to balance that out by consuming some electrolytes, which so it's sodium, I think magnesium, potassium, those are all electrolytes, but sodium is really the one that can cause sodium depletion can cause a lot of issues. The other ones are usually like added into those supplements because they're good for you. And I don't know like exactly why, but they're good for you. But the sodium is like really the key there. So yeah, but it depends on the context. If you're just eating mounds of
salt with
sodium, then that's not going to be good for you. It's all relative.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'll never forget that now though. That's crazy. So like that's why Gatorade is great when you're trying to rehydrate because it's got salt and sodium in it and electrolytes. All right, my God, it's all starting to make sense now why we live in this world. Okay, so any other, I'm gonna pivot here and it is still tips, but what are some pre-rave? Let's hit the pre-rave, then we'll go post-rave. So what are some pre-rave tips for people attending festivals that they should do? Let's say reasonable time frame. Let's go the week leading up.
So make sure that you're getting enough sleep. That's huge. Also like getting enough sleep at the festival, but you can, not everyone wants to do that. It's understandable. Festivals sometimes go till like sunrise, and who wants to miss out on that? I get it. So just, prepare ahead of time, and get a lot of sleep leading up to the festival. A lot of people, when they're taking MDMA and, they have the Monday blues or whatever they call it, a come down, a lot of that has to do with sleep deprivation, and you're not going to like completely get rid of that by, sleeping a lot during the week before the festival, but you can sort of alleviate it a little bit. So I think that's probably my number one tip. I also recommend that people like stretch, maybe like take some yoga classes, because going to festivals can be really, really hard on your body, and you want to be able to like stay loose and make sure that you're not, prevent any injuries. And the best way to do that is with exercise, movement, stretching, anything like that. And then, not to beat a dead horse, but hydrating before the festival is also really, really important. So make sure that you're at least getting like the 8 cups of water in every day. I have this huge cup that I fill up 3 times a day to make sure that I'm getting
Wait till you see
water.
this one. I'm doing a 64-ounce bottle right now.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's even better, because then you don't have to like get up every
you still have to get up
few hours.
not to refill the water.
Yeah. And then another big thing is like checking the weather. Like, people don't often, especially if it's like a camping festival, but also if you're going to like a city festival, because that can help you prepare like what you're going to wear. Obviously if the festival, if it's going to be really, really hot, you'll want to wear like loose fitting clothes. You might want to wear less clothes. If it's going to be cold, you'll want to make sure to pack to bundle up. So that I feel like that's something that a lot of people like forget or don't really like consider as part of like health and safety. But I really think that it is, because it can, like we've been talking about, like what you're wearing can definitely like exacerbate any kind of like heat stroke or even like hypothermia. So that's really important too.
So 5 tips we would go: sleep, water or hydrate. Oh my gosh, weather.
Yep.
Test your stuff.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna add one myself. I think eating. I think you should eat. I think you eat like a good. I always like to get a big meal before the festival, like something just like load up on, because sometimes you do, not intentionally, but it just happens where you don't eat for some reason, or you don't get enough as you normally would. Like I've definitely, now I try to make myself eat for sure 2 to 3 meals a day, because it's just like I look back and I'm like, why did I ever do that? But yeah, I'm gonna say a 5th one, eating something big that first day. That could help you for the whole weekend if you get the right amount of nutrients and stuff that you're loaded up on. I'm gonna say that one. So.
That's a great one. And yeah, I definitely left that one out. But yeah, I mean, eating can definitely like make or break how your energy. You need it for energy
throughout the whole weekend.
Yeah, like you need energy to get through the weekend. So I agree. Like I always force myself to eat, and sometimes even like if I'm not hungry, I've had situations where like I have really not been hungry, and like a lot of times like heat affects me. Like heat just makes me not want to eat for some reason. But my energy is getting so low, and my friends are just like, just shove something in your face, like just do it. And then I feel so much better afterwards. Like it's like, just so much better. So 100%. If your energy's dropping, eat something. A lot of people will obviously like turn to substances because of that, but like your body needs food and water. That's all it needs.
Anything, if you're feeling that low, not really wanting to say, but like if you need to eat, it might help your substances. You don't have to keep re-upping and hoping you get somewhere and get fatally into the medical tent, but like you could eat and feel much better, and then I'm sure you'll have a better night after that. Your body is just like, give me energy. This isn't enough energy. Let's go post rave now. What are some everyone wants to know this one. This is the big one. What are some post rave festival tips? Let's fire off. So give me 5 of them and then we'll dive into them. So 5 post rave festival tips. Go.
I hate to say, but it's going to be a lot of the same.
All right.
I'll talk about it. I'll try to like, I'll gloss over hydrate, sleep, obviously. Take a shower, take a long hot shower. Like that. I getting the post festival shower or bath or something is always,
they're always best. There's no doubt about it.
It's the best. I'm like a very short showering person, but like after getting home from a festival, I'll take like an hour-long hot shower and it's the best. Also, like if you're if you're at like a camping festival, you're probably like inhaling dirt all day, because like a lot of times they're like on like dirt fields. So like a hot shower will also kind of like loosen everything up in your nose, and that's always really good. Another thing, so I would say that this is a post-festival thing to do, but I would say prepare for it pre-festival is to get a massage. The post-festival massage is amazing, but you know, obviously like you'll want to schedule that before you leave. So, and like, as we've been talking about, when you're at a festival, you're like doing a lot of exercise. So you'll want to make sure to sort of like loosen your body up when you get home. Let's see. I can't think of anything else. Yeah.
Get some supplements in you. That's what I
supplement. Yep.
Supplements.
I
do that during, during, and after. I'll wake up and get either like a camping festivals. I'll do a liquid IV in the morning and an emergency, and then like a multivitamin. And I just get I cover all the bases. I don't want to get sick. I want to be hydrated, and I want all my nutrients, like all of it's right there. Yeah, that's a big thing.
And a coffee
at
least for me.
No, definitely like when I don't do it at a camping fest much, but like city festivals, when we're somewhere, I'm like, coffee in the morning. I'm excited.
Yep.
I do this. This is not a thing. So recap 5 quick things. Oh my gosh, 5 post-rave things to do: sleep, shower, hydrate, massage if you can, nutrients, vitamins.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I think
and unpack.
Yeah, that's a hard one to do. Mine's sitting in the car still to this day. No, I'm kidding. But
yeah, I'll add one to the pre-festival, which is clean your house so you come home to a clean house afterwards.
Oh my gosh, that is such an important thing that I don't know if that's just because we're like getting older, we're adults. I do that now for anything. Like I go away for a day. Yep. I'm like, I want to get home. I don't want to see the dishes the way they were. I don't want to see the trash full. I'm like, oh, I just want to get home, get in my bed. That's so funny you say that. I think that's just like, as I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, I want to come back to a clean house.
Yeah, it makes it that much easier for yourself. We don't have like a pile of dishes in the sink. You don't have to take out the trash.
No, 100%. What is one thing that you do post rave? Maybe not everyone can do, but something, or they can do, but something that you do is like a tradition if you have one. Curious.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Okay. It's not a tradition, but I would make it one if I lived out in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm going to preface it by saying I don't do this every festival because I'm not able to, but I would if I could. After the last time I went out to the Gorge, me and my fiance drove straight to a hot spring spa afterwards. That was like 2 hours away. And we just like soaked in the hot spring. We took a nap outside. It was the best post festival thing I have ever done. So if I was out in the Pacific Northwest and like going to festivals there all the time, that would be my tradition.
Okay. Gotcha. Is there a food or anything that you go get afterwards? So you're on East Coast. You're like, you wake up the next day, it's Monday, and you're like, I'm getting a nice bagel with cream. I don't know what it is. What is it?
That's it.
That was it? Okay.
Bagel.
That's funny.
Bacon, egg, and cheese, or cream cheese and lox.
Yeah, I think that's also a super important thing, is to get something that like lifts your spirits. Like something you normally maybe you don't always get, but you're like, I need it this post rave, because even whether you've done something or not, you're beat after the 3 days. You just are. But even if you've done something, you're really beat, and then you get something small to lift your spirits, and you're like, I can do this. Is a great day, and then you just keep on trucking. Yeah, 100%. I've said it on here before. Mine is a smoothie. I go to Smoothie King, and I get a smoothie every time post rave. I'm like, I get like excited. Like Sunday night comes, and I'm like, I am getting a smoothie tomorrow. I get so excited about it, and they are the fruit and everything is just so good, so good. I
also like get like sort of along the same lines. A milkshake is always good if my stomach can handle it.
Yeah, that's a good.
Sometimes they can't.
Milkshakes I understand that. Milkshakes are great, but they are sometimes just too heavy.
Smoothies are usually like my during festival meal. Like I said, with the heat, like it makes it, for some reason, like it just suppresses my appetite. So smoothies they can be nutritious. They go down really easy. They're cold, so they cool you down. So that's my like during festival meal.
Yeah, I got buddies that's their same thing. They're like, I'm going to get a smoothie. I have other people that get lemonade. Well, lemonade is good, I will be honest.
Not a meal though.
Not a meal. No.
And I would say if smoothie isn't a meal, I would say like you need to get some like protein powder or like something in there. It can't just be like blended fruit.
Right. A little bit. Yeah. A little extra stuff in there. We talked post rave. Now let's talk about the come down aspect of it. I think a lot of people always want to know what are some small things they can do. And you already touched on it a little bit beforehand, but let's dive in a little bit to those. So this is more oriented to people who have done something over the weekend. And what are, let's say, again, we'll dive into, let's go like 3 things off the bat, rapid fire, that they can do so 3 things that can help a come down. And then we'll dive into we'll dive into more what they're going to be. But what do you got?
I don't want to repeat myself again.
No, they're important.
So sleep is the number one thing. Like I said, a lot of the times sleep deprivation is the reason you feel like shit after a festival. It's not necessarily the drugs. Keeping track of your dosage. So let me back up a little bit, actually sort of related.
Yeah.
A study just came out. They looked at they basically studied the people who were in the MDMA trials to see if they had a come down.
Oh, okay.
And they concluded that they did not. So there's obviously a difference between taking MDMA recreationally and taking it in a clinical setting. But we can sort of take some of those practices and apply them to a recreational setting. It's not going to 100% get rid of your come down, but it might help a little bit. So getting back on point, tracking your dosage, not taking it multiple days in a row. Some people will roll 3 out of 3 days at a festival, and that you're just asking for a come down at that point. Plus the 2 subsequent days after the first one, you might not even feel anything. It's kind you're just continuing to deplete the serotonin in your brain, and you might not even have any left.
Right. And most people end up taking more because of that. I can't feel it from what I took yesterday.
Yeah.
And then it's just,
exactly. So if you do that, if you happen to take it a second night and you don't feel anything, don't continue to redose, because it's not going to make it any better. It's going to actually make it worse in the long run. But even if you're just taking it that one night, be careful with redosing. I saw an article, one of the MDMA therapy people who work for the study, he said that if you want to redose, you would take your full dose, which is usually 0.1, and then every subsequent dose you would half that, and you would wait 3 hours in between. That was what I saw in this article. I don't know if it's true or if that actually helps to, he said it helps to, prevent a come down, and that, and that it helps. So I would say number 2, keeping track of your dose. And then number 3, testing your drugs, because the contaminants in the substance might be causing you to not feel well. And then also, if you're taking something that is not MDMA, then, and you're sort of misusing it in that way, that can also make you feel bad. So I think those are the 3 main things.
3 things help come down. Go name them off again. Sorry.
Sleep, getting enough sleep. And then keeping track of your dose, not like continually re-upping, and then testing your drugs.
Nice. Yeah. Question with this on the come down subject. I've heard of 5-HTP. I think I've talked to you about it before previously on my podcast, but is there any new information on that? Is there, I know we talked about it don't take it this day, right after, wait a day or two and then start taking it. But is it actually something that, yes, we can say that it does help a little bit? Kind of speak on that a little bit more. Cause I know, at least in my group and friends I know, they're like, oh, 5-HTP. They're just like, oh, it's going to fix it all. Like, all right, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. Taking 5-HTP is not going to, be the end all be all cure if you are rolling 3 days in a row and not sleeping and not drinking enough water. Like it's not a magic bullet. It might help a little bit, but it's not going to be enough to sort of like counteract all of those things that you're doing over the weekend. But it doesn't hurt to take it unless you take it within 24 hours after your roll. You could be at an increased risk of serotonin syndrome if you take it within that 24 hours. So no harm in taking it after the 24 hours. And then I'll also say asterisk, and you're not on SSRIs, because that could also lead to serotonin syndrome.
That makes sense. Did not know that one. That's good to know. Is there, oh yeah, you just said the serotonin syndrome. I also heard, I don't know if you've heard this or I saw it on TikTok, so probably could not be true, but taking it with green tea is supposed to get it better in your system. Is that something you've heard of or know of? It's okay if you don't, because like I said, I saw it on TikTok. I don't know.
I don't know about it in that context. I have heard people recommend green tea after taking ketamine, because their ketamine can cause bladder issues. And I guess green tea helps with that in some way. It helps alleviate some of those bladder issues. But I haven't heard of taking or using green tea to help with like increasing the efficacy of 5-HTP.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's also very interesting with ketamine. I had never heard that either. Okay. So let's see. The only other questions I have is where do you see your page going, and what are some of the things you want to accomplish in the upcoming year? Big kind of question, heavy hitter question, but
yeah, no, that's a really great question. Like I said in the beginning, like I am really passionate about harm reduction, and I would like to have like a full-time career in it. So if I could make doing TikTok a full-time career, that would be awesome. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it might. But also I would love to like work for a harm reduction organization. And like, I think like doing communications for harm reduction or like a drug policy organization would be like my dream job. So that's definitely a goal. Another goal of mine, I want to create a better sense of community on my page. I haven't really figured out how to do that. I've been sort of like juggling the idea of making like a Discord or like a Facebook community, something like that, so that I can connect better with my followers, and they can connect with each other and like share resources and stuff like that. So that's something I've also considered. So yeah, I think those are like two things that are sort of like on the horizon or like goals of mine.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. I like the whole idea of the community aspect and the fact that they could share things that also help one another and get everybody involved, partying safe and whatnot. And I mean, hopefully it gets big enough to where each rave group has at least one person in that community where everyone, this starts to be more and more aware. Have you, or actually not have you, I'm sorry, but my last question is there any policies or anything in the legislature or anything that we can do to kind of get better get better laws and stuff with this? Is there something we can do, whether it's donating, whether it's, like I say, getting actively involved? Is there something that listeners could do if they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said earlier, reagent or test kits in general are considered drug paraphernalia in a lot of states. So if you want to check which state, or if you want to check if your state, if they're illegal in your state, you can go to drugcheckinglaws.wordpress.com. And this website is my baby. It was the first website I ever made, and I did a lot of research for it. Basically, lists in detail all of the drug checking material laws in every single state. It separates it out by possession and use or sale, and then it also separates it out by reagent test kits, fentanyl test strips, because some states are starting to legalize fentanyl test strips but not reagent test kits, honestly, because they don't even know what they are. So step number one is to go there and just even see if things need to happen in your state. And then you can work on coalition building. I would recommend reaching out to certain harm reduction organizations in your state if you really want to get involved. There's always a local harm reduction organization. There's Dance Safe, there's Students for Sensible Drug Policy. So any of those organizations would be great at sort of getting the ball rolling on this. I created the website as part of an internship that I was doing with Dance Safe, and they are working on an advocacy toolkit to help get test kits legalized across the country. So I think, if you're really if you really want to get the ball rolling on this, you can reach out to them, and they're a great resource for who to sort of connect with, and guidance on lobbying and things like that. And then the other one is the Rave Act. There is a campaign called Amend the Rave Act. I haven't really heard of anything that's happening with it lately, but that's a federal law actually that was created by Joe Biden. So you can look up Amend the Rave Act and see if there's sort of any initiatives happening to continue to pressure them to change the law in any way.
Right. Gotcha. That's awesome.
And then also you can just show your support for harm reduction, because I think the more support for harm reduction there is in the community, I think hopefully the greater chances are that some of these event producers who don't want harm reduction at their events, the greater chances that they'll be more willing to have it at their events.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of those. Those are very important. And I think we'll have more and more people sign up as we get your voice out there and whatnot. So thank you very, very much again for taking time out of your day to come on and talk about drug safety, as well as pros and tips and tricks is what I was trying to say for starting festivals, coming downs, all that stuff, as well as talking about the different reagent kits and everything. It's all very important. Hope we touched on a lot. There's still more we didn't get to touch on in this hour, but so hopefully we can have you on again. Maybe we'll talk more in depth on fentanyl and stuff like that that's coming out, because those are also just as important as what we talked about tonight. But once again, thank you so much for coming on. Me and Ade greatly appreciate it, and the Festival Tales fam appreciates it as well. By the way, tell them where they can follow you at, as well as we'll make sure it's in the podcast description.
Yeah, I am at Party Safer with Jess on Instagram and TikTok.
Awesome. All right, guys, go check her out. Go follow her. That's all we have for this episode. Peace.